أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome. So glad you could join us. Today, we're diving into a really pivotal moment in the Quran, the story of Prophet Abraham, or Ibrahim. We're going to explore how his trials came to define a whole new kind of leadership, one that's not based on power, but on this profound state of submission. So, you have to imagine the scene in the grand story of humanity. After so much collective struggle, so much failure, the Quran does something really unexpected. It doesn't just hand down a new law or build a new institution. It introduces a single person. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why a person? Well, the answer is just profound. Abraham, you see, isn't presented as some ancestor to claim bragging rights over. No, he's presented as a standard to be measured against. He is the human axis for our realignment with the divine. His authority wasn't something he inherited. It was something he earned through a whole lifetime of sustained surrender under the most immense trials. Okay, so to really get this, we've got to go straight to the source. We're turning to the second chapter of the Quran, Sūrah al-Baqarah. These next few verses lay out the actual divine dialogue that establishes this whole new model of spiritual authority. وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ قال إني جاعلك للناس إماما قال ومن ذريتي قال لا ينال عهد الظالمين. And remember when Abraham's Lord tested him with commands and he fulfilled them completely. He said, I will make you a leader for humanity. Abraham said, and from my descendants? He said, my covenant does not reach the wrongdoers. Right from the get-go, notice what's happening. Leadership is tied directly to passing a test. And God makes it crystal clear. This covenant, it's a moral one. It is not about your bloodline. It's a conditional promise.
وَإِذْ جَعَلْنَا الْبَيْتَ مَثَابَةً لِلنَّاسِ وَأَمْنًا وَعَهِدْنَا إِلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ أَن طَهِّرَ بَيْتِيَ لِلطَّائِفِينَ. And remember, when we made the house a place of return for people and a sanctuary, and we entrusted Abraham and Ishmael, purify my house for those who circle it. Now listen to the shift here. The center of this new community, the Kaaba, it's not some palace to be owned. It's defined as a place of return and purification. It's a service to be performed for everybody.
رَبَّنَا وَاجْعَلْنَا مُسْلِمِينَ لَكَ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِنَا أُمَّةً مُسْلِمَةً لَكَ. Or Lord, make us surrender to you, and from our descendants a community surrender to you. This, right here, this is the heart of Abraham's prayer. He doesn't ask for power or a kingdom, he asks for a state of being, the state of Islam, of being Muslimain, two who are surrendered, completely surrendered to you. For himself, for his son, and for a whole community of surrendered people to come from them. So, how did the great classical scholars understand all of this? Let's take a look now at the zahir, that is, the outer, apparent meaning of these verses. This really helps us build our understanding of the covenant as a clear-cut moral contract. You know, the central question they all seem to wrestle with was this. Why does the Quran go to such lengths to make it absolutely clear that this covenant is moral and not genetic? And the answer is, it's a powerful and very direct response to a very human tendency to claim spiritual status just based on bloodline. And his contrast is really at the heart of the message here. On one side, you have this idea of leadership as just an inheritance, right? A possession based on who your parents were. But the Quran presents the total opposite. It says leadership is a moral state. It's something earned through endurance, it shows up as service, like purifying a place of return, and it requires passing the trial. It's a state of being, not a birthright, a huge difference. And what's amazing is that the great classical commentators, they were all on the same page about this. Thinkers like al-Tabari saw these verses as just completely dissolving all lineage-based claims, period. Al-Qurtubi clarified that this leadership, this imamah, it's about setting an example, not about ruling by force. Ar-Razi adds that the trials themselves were like a whole life's curriculum. And Ibn Kathir just seals the deal by saying that condition from God about the wrongdoers, that's a permanent, unbreakable principle. Okay, so that's the outer layer. But now we're going to go deeper. Beyond the contract, the Sufi masters saw in Abraham the prototype of the surrendered self. So what is the inner anatomy of this true spiritual leadership? What does it look like from the inside? And wow, the great master Ibn Arabi puts it with just breathtaking clarity. He says, leadership is granted to the one whose self no longer leads. Just think about that for a second.
True authority from God can only flow into a vessel that has been completely emptied of ego, emptied of the very desire to lead. And Rumi, he gives us the motivation behind this surrendered state. He says Abraham's actions weren't born out of some heroic anger, but out of an undivided love. He broke the idols simply because they were in the way. They were blocking his view of the beloved. A person with a love that pure becomes completely safe, a trustworthy guide for others. El-Qushayri then adds another crucial dimension: patience. He points out that divine appointment isn't for the ambitious ones, the ones who arrive quickly. It's for those who remain faithful through long periods of delay, when there's no sign of a reward. For Abraham, you see, leadership was just the consequence of his faithfulness. It was never the goal of his ambition. So, here's the crucial point. The trials were not some arbitrary punishments. As Imam Ghazali explains, they were a divine curriculum designed for one thing: purification. Each test that Abraham passed stripped away another layer of the self, another claim of the ego, until the only thing left was pure, unshakable reliance on God alone. And check this out. This is from the mystical tradition, and it is just fascinating. The very letters of Abraham's name, Ibrahim, are said to hold his story. In a practice called abjad, each letter has a number. When you add them all up and then you reduce them down, you arrive at a single digit, the number 7. And in spiritual symbolism, 7 represents completion, often a completion that comes through a full cycle of testing. It's like his whole spiritual journey was encoded right in his name. So, what does this all mean for us today on our own spiritual path? How do we apply this profound lesson of Abrahamic leadership? Let's just take a moment here for some reflection. O seeker, do not ask God to elevate you before he empties you. The vessel has to be prepared before it can be filled with the divine trust. And let's remember that leadership in God's sight is not about gaining followers. It's about being faithful in the small things, in the moments when no one is watching, being faithful when unseen. This is the ultimate spiritual posture, to stand right where Abraham stood, without any guarantee of the outcome, without making any claim on God or on his creation, armed only with pure surrender. And so we can pray with this intimate supplication, this munajat: O caller of the tested, strip us of what we cling to. Make us safe for your trust before you make us visible. Ameen.
And all of this brings us to the final, piercing question that the Quran poses next, a question we're left to carry in our hearts. Who truly belongs to Abraham? The material for this explainer was compiled by Mir Ali Shah of Living the Wisdom of the Quran. Thank you so much for joining us.